Alright, now, picture this. It's 2009 and you're lead producer / executive behind the hit show Power Rangers. You've seen the hold that this has in the Western market and are interested in what other opportunities there are in the area of adaptations. Sitting next to the Super Sentai property is its sister franchise, Kamen Rider, with its own complicated history of being adapted for the West. However, you managed to convince the other execs that there's some potential in Around 3, and you fire things up to restart the adaptation machine. But this approach is going to be slightly different. Just as Power Rangers rebranded Super Sentai as a whole, it's time to do that for Kamen Rider. For this adaptation, you and the team decide to abandon the name Kamen Rider to think of something independent of its Japanese origin and can stand alongside Power Rangers as culturally distinct interpretations of their prior forms. What do you guys decide to name this new property? Well, that's what we're here to explore today. I want to explore an alternative timeline in which Kamen Rider adaptation was treated more like Power Rangers and see how the franchise and each season would be named. So let's, Henshin? And get to it. So you may be wondering a couple things with this whole premise. Firstly, what on earth is he talking about? Secondly, didn't he already more or less debunk the possibility of a modern Kamen Rider adaptation? Well, yes, I suppose I did, but for hypothetical purposes, let's just say that something like this was greenlit. I actually thought of this entire premise from that video. In that video, I proposed that any potential adapted Kamen Rider series should have its name adjusted to blank Rider. The blank would serve the same purpose as a subtitle for each Power Ranger series, like Wild Force, Ninja Storm, Dino Fury, etc. And I feel like there's a lot of possibility with this. When doing an adaptation where the new iteration shares the same or a very similar name to its original, it becomes a bit more difficult to separate the adaptation from its original entity, which, to be fair, is going to be challenging anyways. Power Rangers has a long adaptation history and has made a name for itself in that space, whereas Kamen Rider has functioned just fine on its own, so the comparisons will happen no matter what. But if we're breathing new life into the series, a fresh name change could really draw the line and make it feel like its own thing. And since Power Rangers essentially replaces the something Sentai part of the title, I think we can rebrand Kamen Rider as blank Rider, with the first blank being our Kamen Rider replacement. I think so that we keep the masked part of the name, we go with Masked Hero or Hero Mask, maybe Masked Hero actually. So we can name our new franchise Masked Hero, with each new iteration being blank Rider. And so, to answer the first question, the job now becomes delivering the entire Power Rangers treatment to the Kamen Rider franchise. We took care of the name, and now we move on to the terminology. There are some other pieces of standardized terminology that exist within Power Rangers that were derived from their Super Sentai origins. One of the biggest things is the Changer, which Power Rangers has dubbed as the Morpher, and is really used in both Power Rangers and Super Sentai discourse. With Kamen Rider, they have their Henshin belt, or Driver as it has been standardized since decades, Deca Driver. I honestly think Driver works out well to be carried over through the adaptation machine, but I think in the spirit of consistency, it would be changed as well. So let's go with Riser. I really didn't want to use the word morph, but I wanted to find something simple that could still sound sci-fi enough to sound cool. And I know that Riser has been used with some of the Henshin devices already, but not main ones, so I think we're safe. And well, there's also one more thing we have to address, the signature term of Kamen Rider, Henshin. This phrase is iconic as it is a singular shared phrase among most of Rider's entire legacy, but much like how we refitted Kamen Rider as Masked Hero, we have to think of a new phrase that isn't so Japanese it can work in a Western setting. I think the best course of action is to use the word rise after each Rider's adjective. It will personalize each call while also adding an effective action verb that has a heroic connotation. I think it's a solid change, let me know what you think though. So I think that more or less sets the framework for how we're going to tackle this new attempt at adaptation. You may also be wondering why I specifically said 2009 in my intro. Well, I wanted to focus on series from the second phase of Heisei, as I think those have some good potential as they are vibrant and stylistic while being very gimmick heavy. What I want to do now is go through the list of phase 2 Heisei Riders and see what masked hero names would fit them the best. For funsies, I'll also do the secondary riders of each series too. For these adaptations, I'm going to avoid just copy-pasting their original names because most of them are English words, so technically they really could work. But I'm going to try and be a bit more creative and, as I mentioned before, try to create a distinctive name for this adaptation and not have it just be a one-of-one of its Kamen Rider counterpart. So I'll be taking the main theme into consideration while using a new word to potentially view the theme at a new angle. Now, I understand that some of you may not like the names I come up with, heck, some of you may not even be on board with this idea overall. But this entire exercise is purely for speculation and just riffing on an alternate possibility for a long-cherished franchise with an undeniable desire from the community for a more prominent Western focus. So with that being said, let's Rider kick things off. First off, we have our half-bold Rider of Futo, Kamen Rider Double. Which, I'm only now just realizing that Futo is literally Japanese for Windy City, isn't it? And that's kind of the part I decided to lean into with this name. Since double symbol is the W and he's always associated with wind imagery, I thought it would make sense for him to be adapted as masked hero, Wind Rider. Now, you could argue that it's only really because of the cyclone part of his identity, but I think it feels like something they would do in order to make the character seem more appealing, regardless of his cyclone memory gimmick. As for his buddy Kamen Rider Axel, I'm giving him the name Masked Rider Moto Rider, because Moto Rider just sounds like it should go together, right? Up next is the Metal Man Kamen Rider O's. This one is really interesting because the name O's is really clever in itself, as it pretty appropriately replicates the visual imagery of the three metals resulting in his transformation. And I thought maybe focusing on the gimmick aspect may not result in a cool enough sounding name, so I decided to focus on the fact that he draws powers literally from the entire animal kingdom. So I will dub Kamen Rider O's as Masked Hero Wild Rider. I mean, need I say more? I think it just makes sense. And for Kamen Rider Birth, while this isn't the best name I thought of today, I thought Masked Hero Capsule Rider may work. I was thinking about using Gotcha, but it really may not reach everyone, and it sounds a bit too close to this guy. Anyways, zooming in next is the friendship crazed space boy, Kamen Rider Fourze. This was actually one of the riders I used as an example in my Rider adaptation video, where I dubbed him Masked Hero Astro Rider. And I stand by that name, honestly. I think it works out on all levels. As for Kamen Rider Meteor, I think Masked Hero Comet Rider works. It's different enough, but also still quite simple. Yeah, let's go with that. Bringing in the magic is the ring-bearing Kamen Rider Wizard. So this one is a bit of a challenge. I want to find a word that invokes the magical feeling, and I really don't want to use the word mystic. I think a good alternative name for adaptation would be Masked Hero Sorcerer Rider. It kind of just rolls off the tongue well and is a pretty decent pun. And as for Kamen Rider Beast, I'm giving him Masked Hero Leo Rider. Now, I know that his original name is more generic to include the other animals, but when he does take on those forms, he still maintains that lion imagery anyways, so I think Leo Rider works just fine. Cutting to our next rider is a fruit sword wielding Kamen Rider Gaim. I may have mentioned this before, but Gaim's name comes from the kanji Gaim, which means armored. This of course alludes to the fact that all riders are referred to as armored riders due to them donning their fruit-based armors in battle. I decided to lean instead more into Gaim's samurai imagery with a punny little name that I personally enjoy, Masked Hero Samurai Rider. I think it would be a really fun way to rebrand the series. For Kamen Rider Baron, I went with Masked Hero Lance Rider because, well, his lance. I don't really have much else for that one. Zooming up next, we have Kamen Rider Drive, another rider who I included in my previous Rider adaptations video. In that video, I named Drive Masked Hero Speed Rider, which I think I will stand by. I was hesitant about this one because technically it more so draws from his type Speed form, but I think maybe when he changes forms, his overall name will change too. I'm thinking for type Technic, he could be Gear Rider, for type Formula, he can be Boost Rider. Each of those I think properly describes his new capabilities in those forms. And of course, for our secondary rider, Kamen Rider Mach, I thought he could be Masked Hero Racer Rider? That one I'm not as confident on, but you tell me. Creeping up next is the ghostly, well, Kamen Rider Ghost. This one I really wasn't sure what to do with. Both Ghost and Spectre are really good Kamen Rider names, so how was I going to adapt it while maintaining the same impact and thematic relevance? Then I got a stroke of inspiration. Ghost draws his powers from the icons that contain certain spirits, so maybe his name would be Masked Hero Soul Rider. I like Soul because we can use the O from the word Soul for the O imagery of the Ore icon. For Spectre, I decided on Masked Hero Phantom Rider because I think it does an equally good job of mirroring Soul, albeit with a darker and edgier vibe. Next up in all his pixelated glory is the gaming doctor himself, Kamen Rider Ex-Aid. Now this one is a bit of a challenge as well. Unlike many of our prior entries, this name is not a conventional English word, nor does it directly relate to his theme. Like, it kind of does, but again, not really directly or obviously at least. So how do we adapt this? Well, the doctor part of this is definitely a bit of a side note, especially when it comes to the rider theming. It's basically all centralized around the game. So I decided to take a cue from the game that Ex-Aid uses to Henshin and call him Masked Hero Action Rider. I think it's general enough, but also specific enough to refer to the platform action type game style of Mighty Action X. For Kamen Rider Brave, I was debating on not doing this, but I think it makes the most sense to call him Masked Hero Knight Rider. I mean, it suits him well, right? And building up to our best match, we have the experimental genius, Kamen Rider Build. I know that his name Build directly refers to creation, and I think it's especially evident when seeing how each combination of full bottles results in something new, and at times, a best match. So because his creation aspect leans so much into this combination, I decided to dub him as Masked Hero Fusion Rider. While you could possibly argue that this name works better for Gotchard, since he actually fuses the two chemis together, I think Build's look is more of a visual representation of the fusion aspect. For his best buddy Kamen Kamen Rider Cross, I'm going with Masked Hero Blaze Rider. I think it helps to be reinforced by those flame designs and can easily be linked to the dragon aspect as well. Clocking in next is Kamen Rider Go, which I contemplated skipping because of its anniversary nature, but I guess it could be worth a shot anyways. Go's name is literally Time King in Japanese, so of course we have to go with something time themed. I think the best way would be for Go to become Masked Hero Chrono Rider, you know, the objectively coolest term related to time. And for Kamen Rider Gates to become Masked Hero Phase Rider, since phase is also a term used to describe the passage of time. And that's about all the time we've got. Oh wait, we have time for Reiwa? Okay then, let's give it a go. After Go comes the CEO of comedy, Kamen Rider 01. This name is a pretty obvious reference to the binary computing system since this season is all about its technology and AI. It's also a smart name being the first rider of the Reiwa era. That reference we can lean away from, but how do we interpret 01 for our purposes? For this, I've decided to dub 01 as Masked Hero Meta Rider. I just feel like this name is very fitting for this kind of theme. As for Kamen Rider Vulcan, let's go with Masked Hero Hunter Rider. This may not have the tightest correlation, but I decided to lean on the Shot Riser being a firearm, and also on the wolf for being a hunting animal. And well, Isamu's deep desire to destroy all Humagears, you know. Up next is the sword and pen wielding Kamen Rider Saber. Now, most if not all of the Saber riders are named with some sword related terminology in mind, like saber, blades, espada, etc. However, I think something that is equally distinguishing for each rider is their strong connection to their element. So with that in mind, I'm dubbing Saber as Masked Hero Flame Rider. And for Kamen Rider Blades, I decided to go with Masked Hero Wave Rider, because it just sounds kinda good and alludes to his water typing as well. Stamping up next is Kamen Rider Revice, who, well, is a bit of a challenge here. Technically, Revice is made of two primary riders, Revi and Vice. Now, I actually don't really know what the true meaning or definition behind the names Revice, Revi, and Vice are. Some folks on Reddit say that Revi or Levi means to connect, and Vice means evil, so the names put together are to bridge the gap of evil. And it does make sense since Vice is Iki's inner demon, and the show does put a lot of focus on making peace with your demons. I also have seen some people say that it's just a pun on the word revise, alluding to the fact that their forms are genomes that revise their DNA. Let me know if you've heard any other meanings, but the first one at least seems to be a bit more consistent with what I found. And while those are some pretty clever names, I feel like they may possibly not be as action hero-y enough for this Western adaptation. So after much thought, I decided to dub Revice as Masked Hero Generex Rider. Now, admittedly, this is not the cleanest name I've thought of today, but I thought of it so that Revi could be Gene Rider, alluding to the genome changes, and Vice could be Rex Rider, alluding to his demon and kind of dinosaur-like image. For Live and Evil, I actually decided to go with Masked Hero Dawn Rider and Dusk Rider, alluding to his switching between good and evil. This one was a bit of a challenge, but I hope they sound okay. Entering the fray next is Kamen Rider Geats. Geats has a bunch of animal-themed riders that are all essentially named as such with a creative twist. I think that means we have to be a bit creative in this as well. At first, I thought of going with the names of their raised buckles, but I think that's too easy and probably doesn't even reflect their core theming anyways. So for Geats, I thought of a name that may be a bit controversial because it exists in the Kamen Rider space already, Masked Hero Vulcan Rider. I chose the word Vulcan because of the fox family Vulpes, and also because Vulcan is associated with gods in mythology, as Geats' overall story is. For Kamen Rider Buffa, I thought of Masked Hero Brawl Rider. Admittedly, this isn't as creative, but I thought keeping the B word would help it stay connected to its origin and also to reflect Buffa's confrontational nature. And I mean, it kinda sounds like bull, right? Full steam ahead is our star alchemist himself, Kamen Rider Gotchard. This one came to me pretty quickly actually. This is a bit of an uneven focus since Gotchard's base form is a combination of Steamliner and Hopper 1, but I thought a good adapted name for him would be Masked Hero Steam Rider. Especially since Steam Hopper is his default form, I think this works as a good general name, but I also think it works in association with Gotchard's alchemic powers, the steam being the energy used and heat dispensed from the alchemical reaction. I've never performed alchemy, but I think this sounds right. As for Gotchard's secondary rider, Kamen Rider Majin, I think Masked Hero Uni Rider works perfectly fine. It's fun and simple and emphasizes the unicorn motif that she strongly represents as well. And now for our final boy, we have Kamen Rider Gavv. Gavv, as we know, is a play on the Japanese word gabu, meaning to bite. And well, I don't really want to follow the same logic and call him bite or chomp or something, but I think calling him gummy or something like that may be less fitting as well since he switches from that main gummy form anyways. After giving it much thought, I decided to backtrack on myself a bit and I landed on Masked Hero Bite Rider. Okay, but hear me out. Bite, of course, like bite because that's a critical part of his motif, but all the food he eats gives him energy, which is kind of referenced by the term bite. I don't know, that one I'm not as hot on, but maybe it works in conjunction with what I thought of for Kamen Rider Valen, Masked Hero Chalk Rider. basically using the word chocolate and combining it with shock, because it kinda electrocutes his Gochizos when he transforms anyways. At the end of the day, hopefully we've made an entirely new and beloved franchise that exists very similarly to Power Rangers, drawing its core concepts and motifs from its Japanese counterpart while maintaining some key differences that keep it distinct in its own right. What do you think? Do you like these adapted names for the riders we looked at today? If you were to tackle the same challenge, what would you do differently? Let me know. That's all I have for today. As always, I'll be back next time with more fun Toku topics to Toku talk about. See you all next time.